Do presidential spirits still roam the mansion's halls?
What ghostly form pushes past guests on historical tours?
Does a phantom woman quietly descend the stairs? And what is she carrying?
Find out the answers to these questions and more as we uncover the stately hauntings and history from Mount Vernon in Mount Vernon, Virginia.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
And this is The Haunted Atlas, a haunted U.S. podcast. In the interest of fully exploring history of certain locations, the Haunted Atlas may discuss sensitive or disturbing topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Perched above the calm waters of the Potomac, Mount Vernon exudes quiet grandeur. The mansion's iconic white facade, red roof, and stately columns reflect the elegance of 18th century architecture, standing in contrast to the natural beauty that surrounds it. Out on the grounds, the wind rustles through the trees and across the fields, carrying with it the faint sense that you're not entirely alone. To start the episode off, I was aware, I know that the White House was constructed at one point, but I assumed that it had been around since the first president.
No, George Washington never lived in the White House.
He did not. The first one there was John Adams. He was actually the only president who didn't reside in the White House. I was curious. I looked it up because I thought, well, maybe there was a president who chose not to live there, but no one.
I don't know if you can.
Oh, I didn't realize it was part of the deal.
I think for security it is.
Oh, you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
Although back in Washington Adams' time, I'm sure it was less about security and more about status.
True. And honestly, the only times people didn't live there were for renovations or expansions.
Right.
So the place was built in 1792 in time for John Adams to move in. And as we know from Hamilton, like I said, John Adams was the second president. Now, coincidentally, George Washington lived in the place that we're talking about today, Mount Vernon. And I'm specifically talking about the home itself, which the town was then eventually named after.
That's a fun chicken or the egg kind of fact, which came first, Mount Vernon, the estate, or Mount Vernon, the town? I didn't know that.
I know. I actually looked that up too because I was like, I wonder if they named the estate after the town because they were big parts of the town, but no, other way around. The history of the building begins in 1734 with George Washington's father, Augustine. The Washington family had owned the land in Virginia for decades prior, but Augustine decided now to build a family home on the property. It was modest at first, which I feel like most of these stately homes are, and was only 1.5 stories. So it really was just kind of meant for the immediate family. The property became known as the Little Hunting Creek Plantation, and this was a location where enslaved people were unfortunately used for the family's agricultural operations. When Augustine passed due to a short illness in 1743, property passed to his eldest son, Lawrence, which makes sense, and then Lawrence is actually the one who renamed the property to Mount Vernon.
I don't know why I thought that Mount Vernon was built by Washington.
Oh, the house was built by Washington himself.
Yeah.
So no, he kind of spent a lot of time around it as a kid. So that's why he grew so fond of it. And then when Lawrence's widow eventually passed, after Lawrence did, he took over full ownership. So Lawrence passed from tuberculosis, and George then took over ownership of the location in 1760.
Okay. So he had this pretty nice home and land for a while. It seems like he came from a wealthy family.
Yes. I mean, if it had been in his family for decades prior, that also means then that they owned a different property where they were living at the time.
Right. Plus the plantation.
Right. George Washington expanded both the home and the plantation throughout the 1760s and 1770s, and the final expansion that turned the house into what it is today was in 1787. But at this point in time, George was already heavily involved in politics because this was 4 years after the Revolutionary War, and so he was busy literally building the nation at this time.
So he did have the house for a substantial amount of time before he became heavily involved in politics.
Yes, and like I said, he grew up there, so this is a very nostalgic and sentimental place for him. In April 1789, he officially became president of the United States, and he resided here in this house throughout his presidency. He was president until 1797, which was the official 2 terms afterwards. Fun fact, the 4-year term existed at the start of this presidency stuff, but the 2-term limit did not exist So George Washington and Thomas Jefferson both decided to step down after 2 terms, and it was kind of an unspoken rule that other early presidents followed. So no one would go over 2 terms. That was until Franklin D. Roosevelt was president from 1933 until his death in 1945. And immediately following that, Congress set to putting the 2-term limit into law. It was officially ratified just 6 years later in 1951.
There have been so many changes in presidency because back at this time, the runner-up was also the vice president.
Yes, and then according to Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson got rid of that.
Yes.
I don't know how historically accurate that is. I'm going to be real honest here. I have no clue. But Burr would have been vice president. Again, if that's historically. So back to George Washington. He unfortunately passed in 1799. He fell ill, and he apparently passed within a 21-hour period. So he had ridden in through a rainstorm. His clothes were wet. I had read that he left his clothes just be wet so he could get home faster. 21 hours. He started feeling ill and it passed.
But a rainstorm itself cannot make you ill.
No, it might have been the wet clothes on him.
How?
I don't know. Is that an urban legend? My parents used to always say that. You can't be on the rain because you're going to get sick. And I think I thought that was real.
It can reduce your immune system, but you need something infectious to give you an infection. The rain isn't giving you a virus. I suppose if you're drinking it,
that's
maybe.
Fair.
But it's curious. It could be the case that he already had some sort of illness, especially back then, and that the lack of rest and the temperature fluctuations further decreased his immune system.
And I wish we knew more, because people have not pinned down exactly what happened or the exact medical cause of illness. Everything that I read was that it was something to do with his throat, a sore throat that eventually just went terribly wrong. But no one could pin down what it was.
That makes sense. And I do wonder if there was a sense of secrecy around the president and his health care.
That's also true. It may not have been put down into record.
Right.
Or I guess symptoms that we now would be able to identify were not put in a record. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's another good point. For example, now we know when you have strep throat, you can look for the white patches, things like that. They might not have identified that at this time.
Right. After his death, the estate passed hands a few times. And then in 1858, the then owner, John Washington Jr., sold the estate to the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. And this association had their eye on the property for several years and had raised funds to buy it. And John Washington Jr. just couldn't keep up with the costs.
It's sweet that an organization cared so much and had the awareness that this was such an important piece of history to preserve it.
Right. And this is 1858.
Yeah.
And they turned it into a museum after restoring it in 1860. And that was, if you were just putting it into historical perspective, before the Civil War started.
Yeah, I was thinking that it's less than 100 years after he was president.
Yes.
Wow.
Really knew what they were doing.
Yeah, it's incredible that they saved it.
I know. When I realized it was before the Civil War, I was like, holy crap. Because you think of history, or at least us restoring things in the 1900s.
Right.
Starting in the 1900s. So this is really cool. There were a few notable names in the museum part of the building's history that I wanted to just go over. Anne Pamela Cunningham and her secretary Sarah Tracy were the ones in the Ladies Association who took over the building from John Washington Jr. And they were joined by Upton Herbert, who was hired as the superintendent. And the superintendent at that time kind of meant upkeep, making sure the grounds were okay, fixing anything that might need fixed. Vice Regent for New Jersey from 1868 until 1891, Nancy Wade Halstead, encouraged the association to furnish the museum and was super enthusiastic about using actual period pieces. So she had a big part of bringing in actual timepieces to the museum and trying to make it more authentic.
Which is wonderful, because doing that 100 years after is a lot easier than trying to go back now, 300 years after. I mean, not quite 300, but you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, and also John Washington Jr. did help. He donated a bunch of pieces. One of them was a bust of George Washington's head that he had kept. Colonel Harrison Howell Dodge was the 3rd resident superintendent, and he became Colonel Harrison Howell Dodge was the 3rd resident superintendent, and he began extensive preservation efforts during his long tenure, which was from 1885 to 1937.
That is a long time. That's 52 years.
Yeah. It must have been a passion project, which is cool.
And he must have started rather young.
In 1889, Phoebe Aberson-Hearst, Vice-Regent of California, funded construction of a stone wall along the shore of the river to protect against erosion. So she was another woman who had a hand in kind of protecting the place. This is probably my favorite part of the history of this place. In 1936, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, they set out to restore the outer part of the building to be exactly what it would have been the year that George Washington passed in 1799. And they took it so seriously. In doing so, they actually removed a 19th century balustrade from the roof. And I had to look this up. A balustrade is an architectural railing system mainly used for safety. Or decoration, because like I said, this was on the roof, and obviously I don't know that climbing up the roof, so it might have just been decorated. But imagine like stairs with the railing going. That's kind of what a balustrade is.
Yeah, it makes me think of the widow's walk on top of these older houses, and people say they would be up there looking for their husband to come home from war.
Oh.
So Civil War era, I think widow's walks were pretty common. It would make sense for the time period being 19th century.
Yes. Yeah. That's actually, I did not know that. So that's a really...
Yeah. And it kind of is like a platform with a very intricate railing around it on the roof of a house or towards the top, because then they would be able to look out and see.
Right. It looked beautiful. There is one photo on the website you can see with the railing. It's not really a photo. It's more like a drawing. But I think it was really innovative of them to remove that, just to be like, you know what, we're going to restore this and take off everything that would have happened in the modern times. In 1983, some Howard University architecture students came together to design a memorial to the enslaved individuals that were buried on the property. And finally, in 1987, Mrs. Clinton M. Boxtus, Vice Regent of Connecticut, donated to the museum to establish a permanent archaeology program.
So are they still excavating? Oh, I would assume it is tons of land. But that also makes me wonder, like, can we join the Ladies of Mount Vernon Association?
It is the best that a lot of this history has to do with women making preservation efforts.
Right.
From here, it's mostly just extra preservation efforts by the association in general to make the museum appear as it would have been back in George Washington's era. So they've never really given up this goal. They've renovated a ton of rooms. They put a few rooms like back to what George Washington would have had them as, and like put in time period pieces. So honestly, it's history repeating itself. They're just trying more and more to make it more historically accurate. Some like to call the Mount Vernon estate the first White House, since this is where George Washington resided during his presidency. It seems now it's not only George Washington who calls this mansion home, as other spirits from its past are also prevailing.
Hey guys, I'm Tommy from Tommy Cullum's Let's Get Freaky podcast, where we talk to real people and have real conversations about paranormal experiences, including ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and all high strangeness, and even a little bit of conspiracy too. So if you enjoy these freaky conversations, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're also available to watch on YouTube. Tommy Cullum's Let's Get Freaky.
While Mount Vernon is rich in history and legacy, many believe the story doesn't end with the past, because some say the spirits of those who once lived here may still linger. When you have such a prominent person here in life, it's no surprise to me that they're still here in death. And of course, we have to start with George Washington. Right? He spent so much time in his childhood here. It was super important to him. He lived here. Of course, he's going to be here in his death.
Right.
He's often seen in his former bedroom, which, as you mentioned, has been restored when they did put the rooms back to the uses that he had. However, he's only seen, allegedly, in the middle of the night. Bushrod Washington actually had a guest stay there when it was still a family home, and the guest reported seeing the ghost.
Oh, whoa, that's a really old report.
It is, and also amazing. Imagine being friends with the Washingtons, staying there and seeing an apparition of the George Washington.
I was wondering if putting the room back to its original purpose is kind of what drew George Washington's spirit out. out because the house would have been set up more and more to him as he knew it. But to hear that a report is that old, then that kind of takes away from my theory a little bit, because then he's just been kicking it for a while here.
Right. And this wasn't the master bedroom. This was a guest bedroom.
Right.
Now, a few questions and theories that I have. The first is, why only at night?
Maybe during the day he's like working, so he's out of the house and they're in another location or out on the grounds versus like actually in the house in the bedroom.
That was my thought, is that he's realizing at night that someone else is in his bed versus kind of just running on a loop through his day.
Yeah.
He is not alone, because a woman is frequently seen in the house as well. She's often seen descending the staircase wearing an 1800s era dress, so a little bit after Washington.
Okay, so it could have been like the spouse of someone came after George Washington. I know you mentioned
Bushrod.
Like, I know you mentioned Bushrod.
Yeah, or having learned all about the Ladies Association, I wonder if it's one of them, because they were so passionate about this, and the 1800s era outfit would have still fit them.
Yeah.
She is seen, like I said, descending the staircase, carrying something that seems to resemble a punch bowl in her hand. The spirit has not been identified. And the spirit has not been identified. So I don't think it's Martha, because one, it's not the right era of dress.
Yeah.
And two, there are many paintings of Martha Washington.
Oh, so you think people would like know?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
people would be able to identify. I think it has to be someone lesser known, maybe not as prominent. Also, I think that given that this person is carrying a punch bowl, it's likely a worker or someone hosting an event. I don't think Martha Washington, as the first lady, would have been carrying a punch bowl down the stairs.
That is a very good thought. I was thinking it then couldn't be someone from the museum almost, because if it was during the museum period, I don't know how much they allow food and drink, but a lot of times museums don't. But it could have been an event. You're right.
That's what I was thinking. Like
Yeah.
maybe a fundraising event or the opening of it as a museum.
Oh, because that would be a significant day. I wonder then if it's like Anne Cunningham, the first person who
Yeah.
like led the like buying the house.
It would be cool to take that list of prominent names that you went through and have people look at the pictures of it if they've seen the apparition to try to match it person.
Well, you know what? On the website, they have the first picture of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association ever taken. And Anne Cunningham is in there. And I think it's like the original group. You could actually show a picture and try to see if you could identify the apparition.
Yeah, you just have to then see the apparition.
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
You just go to Mount Vernon and you carry the photo around you, hoping to see apparitions. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let me double check. We're going to move forward in time a bit with our next ghost. This man is dressed in 20th century clothing and has a mustache. So we've jumped up to 100 years.
Right.
He isn't as passive as the other spirits here. He's said to appear as if he's yelling at someone. He brings with him the air of anger, but we do know who many people think he is. People think that he is Harrison Howell Dodge, a former museum director.
Ah, okay. So when you say air of anger, is it like malicious spirit energy, or is it more just like manage your anger type?
Yeah, I think
energy?
it's more of a sense of authority. So
Okay.
it would make sense if he was the director.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if he is upset that people have moved things around, or people are perhaps going where they shouldn't or touching something that they shouldn't. I think for almost everyone involved in Mount Vernon and the preservation, this really was a passion project. So if he sees something disrespected, even in the afterlife, I could see him being angry about it.
As museum director, I'm also assuming he had the house set up the way that he wanted to, in his presentation of the museum. And even though I think it's a valiant effort that these women are putting everything back to the way that it was when George Washington resided here, Harrison is probably like, can you stop moving things? I have things set up the way I would like to.
Right. It's definitely possible that that's what he's feeling. Considering the 18th century woman and Harrison, it's almost like caretakers over time, because we have Washington, then we have the woman that we believe is part of the Ladies Association, and then we have a director. So yes, these people were passionate, but they also definitely had authority when it came to this. There are some physical hauntings as well. Visitors report feeling pushed or like someone is moving past them. In most cases, they actually see an apparition that then fades away before they can really identify who it is or even from what era it is. Workers specifically have reported feeling like there are people with them in the rooms while they're working there. Sometimes they feel like someone is resting their hands on their shoulders, only for no one to be there.
The hands on the shoulder is so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's kind of an intimate, like it's not, but it is, that's too close to my head.
It is, because what's the reason for it in terms of working on something? You know what I mean?
Like, why is that?
Yeah.
Is it happening to a certain gender?
No,
just
workers.
anyone?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't have an explanation, but
maybe affection was different back then.
Maybe. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, or maybe it's just the spirit trying to show that they're there.
Yeah, maybe it's not even really, maybe that's just like what makes the most sense to them to try to or physically the easiest way to get in contact.
Yeah, it definitely could be that. Ghosts have actually set off alarms here. During the night, an alarm went off and the guards went to check only to see that no one was there. And at the same time, another one went off in George's bedroom. Now, both times the guards didn't find anyone there, but if George is making a regular appearance in his bedroom, it could be that he's moving through the house, especially if he's moving through the walls. That could be the case.
Absolutely. And since he's only seen in the, like we said earlier, he could be just gets back to his bedroom.
Right, or in his office or study and then heading to his bedroom. There apparently is another audible haunting here. Some say the sound of screaming comes from the nearby woods. This is said to only happen at night, and I think this could be a lot of things. There could have been wars nearby. We know there were enslaved people here. Who really knows what went on? This could even date back to Native American.
Right, because it's in the woods.
Right, but people say that you can hear it definitively from inside the house.
That's terrifying, because I don't even know if a real person was screaming it that well. I don't know how close the woods. I've never been to Mount Vernon, so I don't know how close the woods are. I don't know how physically possible it would be. Maybe that's just naivete on my part, but I don't know. That's got to be real loud. Like, what if you're outside of the house?
Well, and the sensation of what's coming must be terrifying. If you're in the house and you see an apparition, it almost feels less scary, in my opinion, because you're in there with the apparition. Okay, you've seen it. You know that the place is haunted. Hearing something like that in the woods, you have no idea what's coming for you, or if anything is coming for you.
Well, what I was thinking was, if I'm in the house and we're doing an investigation, right, and I don't know that that's a haunting, or I guess historical museum tour even, and I don't know that that's a haunting, my first instinct would be to call 911, because I'm thinking it's a real person getting hurt in the woods.
That's a good point, actually. I would probably run out of the house to see what was going on.
Yes. If it was like so loud, I would automatically assume it was a person.
I wonder why just at night.
Yeah. I guess it could be an event.
It could be an event, or if it was a crime of some sort, crimes happening under the cover of darkness.
Yeah.
The property does have dedicated web pages to their hauntings, but they do not offer paranormal investigations. Given the delicate historical nature of the property, they may never offer them.
Which I understand.
Right, but you can visit it as a historical site.
I just think there are too many artifacts in here from the 1800s, 1700s, that I would not trust people to go in there and do investigations and not ruin things. And I hate saying that because I feel like that's a very pessimistic viewpoint, but I would not trust it. I would be so scared any historical object would be getting ruined.
And even if you don't intentionally ruin something, it's definitely possible that during an investigation, you're looking at your device or looking through a camera lens and not looking around you, and you back up into something and then it's ruined. So I completely agree with this decision.
This is like when I was in Crystal Cave and they tell you not to touch the walls because you're going to like stop the growth of the rock wall and touch.
Way to go.
I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like 11. Sticks out in my brain though.
Yeah, you must have felt so bad. But they do allow people in here for historical tours when they can keep an eye on them and manage the crowds better.
Yeah.
If you have been to Mount Vernon, we would love to hear your stories. You can email the team at hauntedus.com and include Haunted Atlas Mount Vernon in the subject, or find us on social media at hauntedus. Tune into our next episode to see where we drop the pin on our adventure across the haunted US. This episode of Haunted Atlas was presented and researched by Sarah Sweeney and Erica Barrett, supported by research from Haunted US head writer Mitch Goth, with production assistance by David Sweeney and music by Colleen Johnson. Our executive producer is Brandon Rugsey. Haunted Atlas is a production of Haunted US. Visit hauntedus.com